Emerson once said, "The purpose of life is not to be happy, but to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well." And it is really nice to know that there is an NGO which is making a difference. Our esteemed panelists have beautifully brought out the importance of transparency and good corporate governing principles, with the hope that their ideas today will enlighten the path to better corporate governing regime in India and will bring greater transparency. We, on behalf of Maharaja Agrasen Institute of Management Studies, convey our sincere thanks to each one of our panelists, and as a token of our gratitude, may I request Dr. Urvashi Sharma to present a memento to Sir. Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Much beyond just being rich. And this is the difference between profit and sustainability.
After many trials and errors with profit seeking, what companies today realize is that what they should seek is not just profit model of a company, but a sustainable profit mode of business for times to come. And as an answer to this quest, companies have arrived that the only way to achieve this is being socially responsible and environmentally sensible. And that is the topic of the session today. Corporate social responsibility and environment ethics, need of the hour. Beautiful quotes from Sri Guru Granth Sahib says, "Pavan Guru Pani Pita, Mata Tarat Mahat, Divas Raat Doi Daye Daya, Khele Sagal Jagat, Changiaiyan Buraiyan, Vaje Taram Hadur, Karmi Apo Apni, Ke Nere Ke Dur."
Which means air is the guru, water is the father, and earth is the great mother of all. Day and night are two nurses, in whose lap all the world is at play. Good deeds and bad deeds, the record is read out in the presence of the Lord of Dharma. According to their own actions, some are drawn closer and some are driven farther away. The cover of the Sunday Times once read, "You may never see this leaf again." It was taken from one of the last two trees of its kind, left in the wild. It told its readers that in the space of 30 years, 60,000 plant species will be disappeared from the face of the earth, that thousands of species will become extinct before botanists have the chance to classify them. If the present rate of environmental crisis continues, by 2040, there will remain just a few patches of forests here and there in the world.
With this, we proceed the session. In this session, we have with us Ms. Ishika Taneja, the makeup maestro, India's first Guinness World Record holder in the field of beauty, hair and makeup for implementing world's fastest airbrush makeup, 60 faces in 60 minutes. The young expert has worked with best Hollywood and Bollywood celebrities and is also the executive director of Elbs Group. Ma'am, it is a privilege to have you here. May I request Mr. Ashok Begrial sir to felicitate our guest with floral welcome.
We also have with us Dr. R.K. Mittal, Professor of Management at University School of Management Studies, Guru Gobind Singh, Indraprastha University, Delhi. He had been head of Department of Business Economics at Guru Jambleshwar University, Hisar. In 2002, he was awarded with the Best Teacher Award by Guru Gobind Singh, Indraprastha University. Sir, it is a great pleasure to have you here with us. I request Dr. Urvashi Sharma to present a floral welcome to our guest. Now, may I have the honor to call Ms. Bharti Taneja to share her views on the topic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Are you still sleepy? No? See, I'm thankful to Dr. Vinita who helped me to come here and talk to you people. It was really nice to be here. We talk about CSR, corporate social responsibilities, but do you think when we talk about beauty, I'm talking about beauty only. I have been working for beauty since many years, since 27 years I'm in this field. Do you really think beauty is a corporate sector, or it can be a big thing to have a industry? Beauty is an industry. Believe me, 27 years back when I started with it, it was not at all any corporate thing. It was just small beauty parlors, people who used to work, people who could not do anything in their life. They used to learn a little bit, knew a little, had little knowledge, and used to come in this field. There was no corporate, nothing could be like corporate, if we say. But when I started, I was a doctor, people were really against me. I mean, why you are coming in this field? You can just go to your own field. It was my passion, so I came, I made it my profession because I really liked it. I wanted the whole world to look beautiful as you people are. I think everybody wants to look beautiful, all the girls and boys also. But at that time, there were very less people who wanted to look beautiful, or there were very less people who used to come in this field. But I tell you, now, if we talk about now, there's a big difference. Now, beauty is a corporate sector, beauty is an industry. Hardly people know about this, that beauty can be an industry. People don't know that there are so many machines which are used into beauty. People don't know there are a lot of products which can be the latest things in the market which can be used in this industry. Now, beauty is an industry and a corporate also, because now people have a chain of beauty parlors, chain of beauty clinics. When I started, beauty parlor people never wanted to come into this field, but now all the people who are educated, who want to come into this field, who really want to do anything, who want to do a big change in the industry, because this is a recession-proof industry. If we talk about India, its growth is not even more than 5.5, but this industry is booming at this moment also. Its growth is 20 to 25%. So there's a lot of growth in this field. Now people have chain of clinics, chain of parlors, chain of salons, chain of spas, chain of wellness centers, where you need to have a corporate office, where you need to have people who can manage your clinics, manage your parlors, manage your spas. So we need a lot of managing people who are working in a corporate. We need HR people to keep so many people, because we need more than 2,000 people in maybe one industry. We need people who can do sales, who can do marketing, who can look after. Whenever sometime I go somewhere, people will say, you are not there. Who is running the parlor? Who is running the clinic? Because they don't know now this is a big industry. But people like you, who go to the clinics, who go to the parlors, who go to the salons every day, you people know that there are a lot of people. Now we need managers, we need assistant managers, we need so many people on the managing section. The people who are working, the same amount of people who are there, who are managing as a corporate as well. So this industry is really booming, and it's a corporate sector, and once it is a corporate sector, definitely we have corporate responsibilities as well. And I think my daughter Ishika will come and she will talk about the corporate responsibilities which we do. But I think you heard a lot about how the corporate responsibilities are done, and it is very important to do something or the other for the people who are working for you, or otherwise also people who are there whom you want to help. So helping the people is always important, and corporate sector is also doing a big thing in this field. And I think this is very important for everyone to do something or the other. Everybody has a social responsibilities. Being a corporate, your responsibilities become much more. And as he said, you have to have your own plans and a lot of other things as well. But I was talking about beauty industry. This industry is such industry which is booming at the moment, and I think a lot of people we need from your side as well. We need HR from your side. We need people who are doing management in sales, management in other things also, and we will always invite you to come to us, and we can take you in our clinics as well. And I think Ishika will tell you about other CSR which we are doing. Thank you so much.
So true, ma'am. Management is required at every field. We really appreciate sincerity, effort you put into giving us a quality program. You have supplied the missing link. Thank you, ma'am. I would request Dr. Urvashi ma'am to present a memento to Ms. Bharti Taneja as a token of appreciation. I would request Ms. Ishika Taneja to address the audience with her knowledge.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It is an honor to share the podium or the dais with such amazing people. Once I was called by Dr. Vinita ji, and she'd asked me to come and talk about the CSR activities. I was thinking, why? Like, why should we come here and boast about what all things we do and about our philanthropy and stuff like that? And then I thought, why not? You know, I don't want to be boasting about it or telling people, but you guys are young minds, and I'm sure you all have dreams. You all have dreams to make your own corporates. You all have dreams to be the CEO of major corporates in our country or maybe abroad. And why not inspire? Why not motivate you guys and tell them that there can be two ways of doing things. One could be an unethical or unthought way of progressing, and the other one could be thinking about it, amalgamating your goals, your visions, your missions with improving the society. Like the way we go about it is, we have a lot of academies. We have around 17 centers in Delhi, and so there is always a problem once you're handling the corporate. So our problem was that whenever our students had to practice, they never had people to practice upon, because nobody would just come and get their hair chopped. We come from the beauty sector. So people will not just come and play with their hair because somebody needs to practice. There are many corporates who just let them practice on their clients, get them, you know, to pay the money, and somehow we found it very unethical. So there was a gap, and we thought, why not fill this gap in a better way so that we can develop the society. So we had amalgamated with a lot of blind schools, and we now ask all our students to go and practice their cuts, practice their facials and everything on blinds, give them grooming lessons, tell them how to carry themselves, and etc. So in a way, we are improving their lives. There is a teacher on their head which are helping them, telling them what to do, what not to do, and giving them a perfect cut or a perfect service. And in return, they are getting really experienced, and we are one of the corporates who are giving them maximum practice in this industry. So gaps are always there, and you always have choices. But making a choice which would help others is always better for you and better for the society. And if you think about in a long term, it is always better for you as a corporate as well, because what you're giving to the society, you're always building a reputation for yourself. You're always having a brand building for yourself. Plus, and it could be in many ways. Like, this is just one way that I had mentioned. Once I was making my Guinness, because I knew there will be a lot of media talking about the Guinness Book of World Record that I'm making. So, as my parents have always taught me, and those are like visions and missions of our company, that whenever there is a good opportunity, we try to benefit the society as well. So, we had donated around 12 lakhs to all the victims of Delhi, and we had given that money to Nirbhaya Trust, Jyoti Nirbhaya Fund, and in return, we are educating them. And we have around 24 students who are taking that education absolutely free. So all those 12 lakh is going to them. And in return, if we, like for people who just think about profits and how is the company benefiting it from, so then we are building resources. As she had also mentioned that it's a recession-proof industry. While there was a recession of 5%, the industry was growing for almost 20 to 25%. So we need a lot of resources, and so we can really amalgamate CSR and to develop more resources through education and many things, as the sir had mentioned earlier, and benefit us and also the society in return. Similarly, we also do it for a lot of cancer patients. People who are going through chemotherapy, they lose their hair, and also they lose their confidence. So we give them free makeovers, we give them hair extensions, we give them permanent makeup which will last for more than 15 years and make their eyebrows and give confidence back to them. And not just the profits, but once you deal with them and once your staff is dealing with such people, they are so motivated, they feel so happy that they're improving someone's life, that they are so loyal to you. They want to work with your corporate, they want to work with you, they want to improve the society. Plus, they feel very relaxed, and they think that if the company is taking care of such people, they will definitely take care of us also when we are in need. And therefore, we have a company from 27 years, and we have people who are working with us from 27 years, 26 years. So in a way, it really helps your company to give the society and to take back. Also, we do a lot of other things like employment. 65% of our employees, female employees, are either widows or they're divorcees or single mothers. So once we are helping them, and once we grow with them, because once they came to us, they were totally staggered. They didn't have a family, they didn't have the money to take care of the family. So once we help them, in return they always help us. They're very loyal to us. They give an extra effort to help us, and it's again a win-win situation for both. And as we come back, it is they are really loyal to us, and we are just, helping them and helping ourselves in return. Plus, we keep a certain percentage to help our employees, so that if anybody is suffering, if somebody has an accident or they need for hospitals or anything, we have a separate amount for them so that we can help them in their need. And we definitely feel the same, that they're doing an extra bit whenever we need it. Thank you so much. I hope that you also do the same and you walk on the same path. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experiences. I would request Dr. Vinita Gupta to present a memento to Ms. Ishika Taneja as a token of thanks.
We have another guest who has just joined us, Advocate Aishwarya Bhatti, advocate on record of Supreme Court of India since 2006. Has conducted hundreds of cases before the Supreme Court of India for last 16 December 2014 with a record margin. Ma'am, we are extremely delighted to have you here. I would request Dr. Urvashi Sharma to present a bouquet to honorable guest. I would request Dr. Urvashi Sharma ma'am to present a bouquet to our honorable guest.
Now I would like to invite Dr. R.K. Mittal to share his views on the topic.
Good evening, friends. Dignitaries on the dais, faculty members and dear students, participants to this conference, 2 days conference. I'm really happy to be here in this conference. The topic is very contemporary, relevant, and to me I think the essence of the topic is that how business, environment and social responsibility, these things are interconnected. One thing is very clear that since ancient times in India the philosophy is to have a symbiotic relationship with the environment. Business, society, environment, they never had any struggle with each other. And in fact, we worship the nature, and therefore the question of any struggle or any harm to the nature through our operations or activity never is possible, and this is being highlighted by the earlier speakers as well. Over time, during 1970s, one paper was published by W.W. Rostow. He was a famous economist, and in fact, he defines 5 stages of development. From the traditional society to the last stage of age of high mass consumption. That is, a country began the journey with a very traditional operations with low level of income, and agriculture being the main occupation. Sources of income are very limited. Technology is very outdated, you can say. And over the time, the objective is to increase the consumption level. And therefore, after the publication of this paper and the development of science and technology, the mission before the nations, or the goals before the nations, was to increase the GDP, gross domestic product, you might be aware of. And the purpose is that if more and more GDP is there, automatically the per capita availability of the food items or the consumption of the people, that will go up, and which would reflect their level of living. And to this, there is no constraint as such. Engineering, science and technology, you all know, they never think there is any, you can say, constraint on them. They just want to, they believe in the philosophy, or they based on the assumption that nature can be conquered. You can conquer the nature, you can exploit the nature, resources, and in this process, you can increase the GDP, which means the availability of more and more production to the people. So that was the philosophy that dominated over the years throughout the world, including the developing countries. And economists followed this approach. Now this approach created a lot of dichotomous situation. Growth without taking care of the social justice. Growth in itself will not take care of the related issues. Growth of what? It could be defense production. It could be possible that growth, the benefit of growth, they are only being percolated to the only few people, a lightest way of growth, or what we are producing is being consumed by the high class people only, and in this whole process could be possible that the common man is neglected. Agriculture sector, for instance, could be neglected. The items consumed by the masses, they may be underproduced. And therefore, because of all these social considerations, unemployment, the environment degradation, etc., inequity in the system, inequalities, etc., etc., the focus shifted to growth plus equity and other related issues like environment, and therefore the concept of development came into existence, and which means development is a much more broader concept which calls for growth plus other social consideration including environmental issues. So this concept was later on emphasized by so many people including Professor Amartya Kumar Sen and other the leading economists, and therefore there is a need, not only economist or engineer, they can decide the growth, but sociologists, those one who are aware of the social issues, those one who are aware of the environmental issues, they must be brought into the picture if you really want to tackle the broader issues of the development process which benefit all sections of society. And therefore, when we talk about sustainability, the question of sustainability, it is not purely economic sustainability. You generate more resources. Your job is just to, the business of business is to do business. The famous quote given by Milton Friedman, again during 1970s, that the only business of business is to do business, to conduct business within the legal framework. And therefore, generate maximum surplus. Go for profit maximization. This is economics. This is economic sustainability. But equally important is the social sustainability. Equally important is the environmental sustainability. And therefore, these issues become very important in any proper handling of these environmental issues. The private sector, which basically tries to maximize their profit, they work on the decision of private benefit and private cost. That means, suppose due to my operations, due to my activity in the business, if I am creating a loss to the society by way of throwing wastages into the river or byproduct into the river which kills the wildlife, aquatic life, pollute water, create a soil erosion and so many other activity, that means these types of social cost I have not internalized into my system, costing, and therefore cost, social cost is not properly taken care of, or cost is underestimated. Due to this, there is a tendency for overproduction, which ultimately creates environmental issues. And there comes the need for legal intervention, law, environmental laws, so as to penalize this tendency of a private entrepreneur. So therefore, if environmental issues have to be properly to be taken care of, there is a need for legal intervention, there is a need for proper, you can say, awareness into the system, so that all these costs are internalized. We don't create a system whereby this accounting, we only work on private cost and private benefit basis. Accounting system, legal interventions, they must be properly taken care of. And there comes the question of ethics. What is ethics? Ethics means what? you follow the rules and regulation. You do your activity as per law. And anything which create harm to the society, if it comes to the public domain, you don't feel good about it. That could be another way of defining the ethics. So therefore, I personally feel that the need for economic surplus is one thing, but equally important is to take care of social and environmental issues if business have to sustain. And this is what triple bottom line theory, which focuses on people, which focuses on planet and profit. This is a much more acceptable theory. Now, if you look at the whole process, if really we want to address, or any organization want to address this thing, I think two things are very critical. One is competence building. Another is the values, how much value we give. Now, when I say competence, that means a company has you can say capability to innovate. A company or an organization think differently. A company thinks how we can address the environmental issues. Now, if this type of capability is being developed or being discussed, definitely the environmental issues would be addressed. If you just follow the others, you will not going to take a lead over other. Environmental, if you address environmental issues, go green, then definitely you will be having a comparative advantage over other. But company must have the capability. When I say capability, technological capability, manpower capability, strategic planning and other such type of thinking process must exist within the organization. So this is one thing which is critical. Second is the value system. We can, grow, we can preserve the things if there is a proper value system. If you give value to environment, then automatically it will be into your activity. If you don't give value to environment or any other thing, definitely it is not going to be implemented. So environmental concerns, social concern must be a part of the, you can say, values of any organization. It must be, they must be given premium in any organization. And they must be properly communicated into the system. It is not simply that they are mere slogan or statement, but each and every top leadership job is to communicate these things into the system so that they become actionable. They become a part of the strategy. Once it is a part of your strategy, definitely there would be implementation. If you just consider this as a legal requirement, definitely it is not going to benefit much. Although 2013 Act, Companies Act has been implemented and this has been made a mandatory and some progress has taken place, but again I feel the two things are very important to address the issue. One, the competence building at all levels, and secondly, it must be a part of the value system of the organization. If you build your organization on these things, definitely the long-term solution to the problems would be sorted out. Otherwise, there would always be a sort of thinking, why to invest in environment? It is not my job, and my job is to maximize profit, and we have to address the stakeholders and so forth and so forth. This controversy, you can say, may continue. So, I think my only, a sort of suggestion would be that companies need to focus on these two things. Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Sir, your views on the topic truly enlightened us, and your gracious presence made a difference. Thank you, sir. I would request Dr. Manju Gupta ma'am to present a memento to Dr. R.K. Mittal as a token of appreciation. I would request Advocate Aishwarya Bharti to share her valuable insight.
Distinguished guests on the dais, respected faculty members, and my dear students, of whatever remains of the students here. I understand that it has been late. We are already running behind timeline, and I did make some points on my way. I had a long commute to come here. And before I share some of my thoughts on the topic that Dr. Urvashi has given to me, I must confess and tell you that I am here because of Dr. Urvashi, who happens to be my classmate, and we are today meeting after 20 years. I met her on the dais and I wanted to give her a hug, but because we were meeting here and I thought it was too formal, but I'll make sure that I get my hug before I leave. Well, the topic she designated for me was the corporate social responsibility and environmental laws. I'm a lawyer, understandably she chose to give me a topic to talk about laws. I'm not going to bore you now, there's no point. There's a handful of you here. I think we'll just have some dialogue. I'll share some of my views. If you have any questions, I'll answer that and we'll just get going. I do want to tell you something that is very, very peculiar about Indian judiciary. You know, I had a conversation with environmental specialists, lawyers from, across Europe and Americas. The thing that really differentiates them and us, there is a concept called laissez-faire. If I have a problem, I go to court. I can't go to the court and say, Urvashi has a problem, or you have a problem. Whoever has a problem has to go to the court. That is the traditional concept of laissez-faire. Now what happens in India is, there is a term that I'm sure all of you would be familiar with. It is called PIL. The full form of that is public interest litigation. Now what you will find surprising is public interest litigation is nowhere on any statute book. It does not exist on any law book. It does not exist in any constitution. This is actually judge-made law. This is coined from the judgments of Justice Bhagwati, Justice Krishna Iyer, stalwart judges of our Supreme Court. And judiciary, Indian judiciary, led by the Supreme Court of India, has been the real sentinel, the real lighthouse of constitution. They are the ones who have actually kept our democracy vibrant and our environment sound to whatever extent it has been. So public interest litigation is something that is unique to India. It is a departure from the traditional rule that only the person who has an issue goes to court and gets a redressal or relief. It is very, very peculiar to India because in India, the kind of masses we have, the kind of problems we have, it was not possible for the large majority of people to come to court and get redressal of their, get redressal of their fundamental rights because they just did not have the know-how or the resources to come to court. So this PIL concept helped them to come to court to get redressal. But it also helped one more thing in a huge way. That one more thing is environment. Because what happens is when a particular thing becomes everybody's asset, then it becomes nobody's liability. It becomes nobody's child. So, there's nobody to own up or take responsibility for that. That is exactly the same fate, unfortunately, that environment has suffered in our country. And world over also, we have seen. But when we have the true sentinels like judiciary strongly standing behind on environmental issues, that is what creates an impact. So I just want to tell you that some of the important cases on this aspect, you are all students. I mean, you would have commuted in buses and seen CNG buses, CNG autos. This is something that was forced down the throat by the Supreme Court. This was nothing that, came automatically to the government or they wanted to do something on their own, nothing. The famous case of Taj Trapezium where they moved all, polluting industries. Even in Delhi, polluting industries were thrown out of the parameters of the municipal limits of city because the air was choking. You are probably at an age now that you see the city is choking again. A city was choking 20 years back also. 2004 this judgment came, and then things fell in line, but then again things have gone bad. The way our rivers are, we treat our rivers as sewerage drains. So we don't really treat them as rivers. But if you travel across, you see even countries like who are less developed than us, like Egypt and all, just one river in the entire country, and you should see how beautifully they keep their rivers. And we are, I'm ashamed to even call Yamuna a river. It is a sewerage, a line which is just flowing through our city. Just imagine if our river was to be clean, was to be beautiful. It would encourage so much of tourism around it. There's so much of other industry that can develop around it. The problem is that the corporates, though there is a concept of corporate social responsibility, but the main motive of governance or operation of a corporate is profit motive. And that profit motive ultimately turns into greed. So the world has enough for everybody's need, but not for everybody's greed. So we have to draw a line where the need ends and the greed starts. So, but today, let me tell you, there is a change. It's not all gloomy in the, place of environment for corporates. The IT revolution, internet, the information technology, and complete transparency in policies, corporate policies have ensured that today's CSR is not just a requirement. It is now mandatory. It is something that it's an obligation that people can't run away from. So, we as citizens, we as people, you as management students, in all spheres of life that we exist and we work, we should make choices where companies have responsible corporate social responsibility initiatives. Essentially, it's in three limbs. One is inward looking, for what do you do for your own staff, how you are treating your labor, what are your practices inside the parameters of your industry. The second is, looking sideways, the community that you work in, the locality. And the third is forward looking. What do you do for society at large, for the nation, for the globe, for the future generations. So these three limbs of corporate social responsibility have to be taken into mind and have to be today you are management students, tomorrow's managers, and maybe, leaders of the corporate India. So please take this in mind that, we have to ensure that the resources that we have today, that we are enjoying today, the life that we have today, we are able to protect that for posterity, for our future generations. I think I'll just leave it at that. No point, all of you must be tired and we have way past our timeline, but it has been a wonderful opportunity to meet my friend and to address all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your stimulating speech. I would request Dr. Urushi Sharma to present a memento to Advocate Aishwarya Bhatti as a vote of thanks. As we come to the conclusion of this session, indeed, it has been a time of diverse insights, deliberations, and discussions. And I'm sure every one of us leaves enhanced knowledge of the subject. Good evening and thank you one and all. See you all tomorrow morning for the second day of the second international conference.
Repeat your question, repeat. See, when you are in a family business, there are no questions asked. At the end of the day, the shareholders are obviously, part of the family. But when you are a company which is beyond a family, you're answerable to external shareholders, you're answerable probably to a stock market. And that is something I think your responsibility and obligations apart from the family increases to a lot of people, which are your suppliers, your creditors, your debtors, your stock market, for example, your other shareholders and so on. So you've got to be very, very compliant and honest and transparent so that everybody feels proud of what you are doing and people believe and trust on all the actions you have taken for the company. And the chances of dispute are always there. also believe in it. They believe that this is the man who, in a family business, people have their own ideas. Very nice. I think when I was, I'm probably older to you guys by what, 10, 20, 12 years. It's very exciting because, you know, the amount of opportunities today are there in India are much more than when I was entering the corporate world, and they are far, far more than what our fathers used to be. Today, I think it's a very, very good environment for all of us to succeed. And the opportunities are not only just in the medical, tourism, XYZ, they're all fields of opportunity.
जैसे कि हम देख पा रहे हैं कि आज इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस है कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस के ऊपर, तो मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहती हूँ कि एक मीडिया लाइन का कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस पे क्या इम्पैक्ट है?
देखिए, मीडिया लाइन का जो इम्पैक्ट है, मीडिया का हर चीज़ पे इम्पैक्ट होता है। और जब भारत जैसा देश कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस की ओर बहुत तेज़ी से अग्रसर है, तो मीडिया एक वॉचडॉग, एक गाइड की तरह काम करता है कि ताकि उसमें गवर्नेंस में भी, फैसिलिटीज़ में भी, पॉलिसीज़ में भी एक लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड रहे, ताकि वो समेकित विकास हो सके और इसमें कहीं कोई भ्रष्टाचार या प्रिविलेज जैसी चीज़ों का स्थान न रहे। तो मीडिया एक वॉचडॉग के रूप में बहुत योगदान कर सकता है और समय समय पर करता रहता है। दूसरी बात है कि हाल के दिनों में हमने देखा है कि जब पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप के ज़माने में हम चल रहे हैं, तो आपने देखा होगा कि जो सरकारी ऑक्शन होते हैं, सरकारी पॉलिसीज़ बनती हैं वगैरह वगैरह, उसमें कई प्रकार के आपने देखा होगा कि घोटाले सामने आए। तो उसको उजागर करने का काम जो है मीडिया नहीं किया। और आप एक से एक घोटाले लगा लीजिए हाल के दिनों में। और तीसरी चीज़ ये है कि जिस तरह से प्राइवेटाइजेशन और ग्लोबलाइजेशन हो रहा है, तो बिना मीडिया के मैं नहीं समझता कि गवर्नेंस जो है आगे सुचारू रूप से चल सकता है। तो कॉर्पोरेट्स को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए, कॉर्पोरेट्स पे भी नज़र रखने के लिए, कॉर्पोरेट्स की सहूलियत के लिए जो सरकार कैसी नीतियाँ बना रही है, नहीं बना रही हैं, इन सब पे ध्यान रखने के लिए मैं समझता हूँ मीडिया की एक अहम भूमिका है।
और सर, कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का मीडिया पे क्या इम्पैक्ट कर रहा है?
कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का देखिए, कोई मीडिया समाज से अलग तो होता नहीं, परिवेश से अलग होता नहीं। और ये जाहिर सी बात है, आपका सवाल बड़ा अच्छा है। कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का, कॉर्पोरेट्स का, मैं कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का नहीं कहूँगा, कॉर्पोरेट का कहूँगा, असर तो निश्चित रूप से पड़ रहा है। अच्छा भी असर पड़ रहा है और बुरा भी असर पड़ रहा है, क्योंकि आजकल हमने देखा है कि मीडिया मैनिपुलेशन और मीडिया मैनेजमेंट एक बहुत अहम चीज़ हो गई है। तो उसमें मीडिया कंट्रोल की भी बात आ रही है और बहुत बड़े बड़े घराने भी कॉर्पोरेट से आके मीडिया का एक अपना एक आम चाहते हैं, एक अंग चाहते हैं। तो जाहिर सी बात है, अच्छा और बुरा दोनों असर पड़ेगा। ये बात सही है कि कॉर्पोरेट के सपोर्ट के बिना मीडिया हाउसेस का चलना बड़ा मुश्किल है, चाहे एडवर्टीजमेंट में हो, चाहे कैपिटल में हो, चाहे उसके आगे बढ़ने में। तो ये सारे महत्वपूर्ण चीज़ें हैं जिससे मैं समझता हूँ कि कॉर्पोरेट भी मीडिया को प्रभावित करती है। जैसा हमने सुना था कि 2014 के चुनाव में काफ़ी कॉर्पोरेट फंडिंग हुई और मीडिया पे भी कॉर्पोरेट के जरिए पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज़ ने पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज़ ने कॉर्पोरेट्स पर प्रेशर डाल के उनके हिस्से का जो मीडिया है उस पर उसको कंट्रोल करने का प्रयास किया। तो ये चलता रहता है, परिवेश से बाहर नहीं है और दोनों तरह से मीडिया भी इन्फ्लुएंस करती है कॉर्पोरेट को और कॉर्पोरेट भी मीडिया को इन्फ्लुएंस करने की कोशिश करती रहती है।
सर, जैसे कि लाइव इंडिया आपका चैनल, आप इसमें क्या कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस मतलब एक तरीके से क्या कॉर्पोरेट गवर्न करती, किस तरीके से गवर्न करते हैं उसको चलाने के लिए? उसमें सेंसेशनल क्रिएट ना हो या कोई मीडिया पे उंगली ना उठा पाए आपके चैनल पे, उसके लिए आप क्या करते हैं?
देखिए, पहली बात तो ये है कि जब एक इंडिपेंडेंट चैनल चलता है तो उसमें एडिटोरियल विभाग की भूमिका अति महत्वपूर्ण होती है। तो उसमें ज़्यादा कॉर्पोरेट इन्फ्लुएंस चलता नहीं है। ना कॉर्पोरेट्स, हमारे यहाँ के भी जो कॉर्पोरेट मैनेजर्स हैं वो उतना उसको इंटरवीन नहीं करते। लेकिन मैं तो यही कहूँगा क्योंकि इस तरह से जो इंडिपेंडेंट रूप से जो एडिटोरियल टीम चलाती है वो महत्वपूर्ण होती है, तो इस पर कोई प्रभाव पड़ने से रोका जाता है। और इस लिहाज से लाइव इंडिया में जो है आप देखिएगा कि एकदम से बिल्कुल साफ़ सुथरी खबर बिना कोई लाग लपेट के, बिना कोई इन्फ्लुएंस के हो चलता है।
सर, आज इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस पे थी और मैं आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ कि ICSI का क्या रोल है कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस में?
ICSI का प्रीडोमिनेंटली ICSI जब इनकॉर्पोरेट हुआ एज अ स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडी ICSI को फॉर्म करा गया, तो उसको बनाने का मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट अफेयर्स का एक बहुत बड़ा आइडिया ही यही था टू प्रोफेस कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस। हमारा जो विजन और मिशन है इंस्टीट्यूट का वो भी यही है। हमारा जो विजन है, विजन इज़ वेरी क्लियर, विजन रिटन विजन इज़ टू बी द लीडर्स इन गुड कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस। दिस इज़ आवर विजन। और जो हमारा मिशन है इंस्टीट्यूट का वो है कि वी हैव टू मेक द प्रोफेशनल्स, आवर कंपनी सेक्रेटरी मेंबर्स, हाई कैलिबर प्रोफेशनल्स सो दैट दे प्रोफेस कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस। अभी पीछे कुछ टाइम पहले सचिन पायलट जी हमारे कॉर्पोरेट अफेयर्स के मिनिस्टर थे, उन्होंने हमारी एक कन्वेंशन में पब्लिकली 1000 लोगों के सामने एक प्रपोजल रखा कि आप इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ कंपनी सेक्रेटरीज ऑफ इंडिया की बजाय यूज बेटर बी इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ गवर्नेंस प्रोफेशनल्स ऑफ इंडिया, बिकॉज गवर्नेंस हमारे ब्लड में है। The governance is in our blood because the kind of disclosures, the kind of compliances, the kind of systems, the kind of processes which we make as a company secretary is huge, and a lot of expectations are there from us, and that is what we are delivering upon.
सर, आपका एक्सपीरियंस कैसा रहा? यहाँ पे क्या रिस्पांस रहा, क्या रिएक्शंस रहे?
बहुत अच्छा लगा। मैं पहली बार इस इंस्टीट्यूट में आया था और इस तरह की इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस में हमारे सुबह जो कीनोट स्पीकर थे प्रोफेसर JP शर्मा, वो भी हमारे मेंबर ही हैं, कंपनी सेक्रेटरी हैं, वो बहुत सीनियर। डॉक्टर गर्ग को मैं बहुत टाइम से जानता हूँ, मैंने उनके बारे में सुना है। एंड ऐसे इनिशिएटिव्स ऐसे और कॉलेजेस को भी लेने चाहिए। कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस जब तक हम ये जो हमारे फ्यूचर जनरेशन बच्चे हैं उनको जब तक हम समझाएंगे नहीं, तब तक हम रियलिटी में नहीं इसको अचीव कर सकते। और जब तक हम रियलिटी में उनको बताएंगे नहीं प्रैक्टिकल एस्पेक्ट्स, तब तक प्रमोटर्स, डायरेक्टर्स इसको इम्बाइब नहीं करेंगे अपने आप।